If she's not interested in you, the worst thing you can do is try harder. Most men believe desire is created through effort, attention, and persistence. But desire doesn't respond to effort. It responds to presence. The moment you start chasing, explaining, or proving yourself is the moment attraction quietly dies. Because a woman doesn't desire the man who wants her the most. She desires the man who doesn't need her interest to remain grounded in himself. You don't make a woman desire you by convincing her. You make her desire you when you stop leaking value, stop seeking approval, and start becoming the kind of man curiosity responds to. And once you understand how desire actually works, you'll realize something most men never do. Attraction isn't something you force. It's something you stop interfering with. Most men believe attraction begins when they do more. More attention, more effort, more availability, more proof that they care. And this belief quietly destroys desire before it ever has a chance to form. Because attraction does not respond to effort. It responds to how you carry yourself when nothing is guaranteed. When a woman is not interested, most men instinctively move closer. They lean in emotionally. They try to be helpful. They become more consistent, more supportive, more present. They believe effort will eventually be rewarded. But what they don't realize is that effort given too early sends the wrong signal. It signals need. And need is the fastest way to kill desire. A woman does not lose interest because a man is kind or attentive. She loses interest when his attention feels motivated by approval seeking, when his effort feels like an attempt to earn something rather than an expression of self-possession. Desire cannot grow in an environment where value is being negotiated. This is where most men misunderstand attraction. They assume desire is logical, that if they show enough good qualities, attraction will follow. But desire is not logical. It is psychological. It is emotional. And it is deeply responsive to tension, mystery, and self-containment. Effort removes tension. Availability removes mystery. Overinvestment removes polarity. When you try too hard, you collapse all three. A man who pours effort into a woman who hasn't shown interest is communicating something without words. He is saying, "My value depends on your response." And the moment attraction senses dependence, it withdraws, not out of cruelty, but out of instinct. Desire is drawn to strength, not to seeking. This is why attraction never starts with effort. It starts with presence. Presence is what happens when a man is comfortable in uncertainty, when he does not rush to fill silence, when he does not over-explain himself, when he does not chase emotional outcomes. His energy feels grounded, not urgent, and that grounded energy creates intrigue. A woman may not consciously think, "He's different," but she feels it. Effort is loud, presence is quiet, and quiet confidence carries more weight than visible trying. Most men sabotage attraction because they are afraid of losing something that was never theirs to begin with. They fear rejection, so they compensate with effort. They fear silence, so they fill it with words. They fear being overlooked, so they make themselves constantly available. But availability without selectivity is not attractive. It is expected. Attraction grows when a woman senses that your attention is optional, not automatic, that your interest is real, but not unconditional, that your time is valuable, and not something you give away to secure validation. This is where the shift begins. A man who does not try to impress does something powerful. He creates space, and space allows curiosity to form. Curiosity is the doorway to desire. Without curiosity, attraction has nowhere to land. Trying harder closes that doorway. When a man steps back emotionally instead of leaning in, he disrupts expectations. He does not reward indifference with effort. He does not chase signals that are unclear. He remains open, but not invested. That restraint is what changes how he is perceived. This is not indifference. It is non-attachment. Non-attachment does not mean you don't care. It means you care without needing a specific outcome. And that internal posture changes everything. It removes pressure. It removes neediness. And it restores polarity. A woman cannot desire what already belongs to her emotionally. This is why men who do nothing often appear more attractive than men who do everything right. Because they are not performing. They are not selling themselves. They are simply being present in their own frame. Effort-based attraction always backfires because it places the woman in the position of evaluator. She becomes the prize. You become the applicant. And once that dynamic forms, desire dies quietly. Presence-based attraction flips the frame. You are not trying to win her. You are allowing her to discover you. And discovery is far more powerful than persuasion. A man who understands this stops chasing interest and starts embodying value. He stops asking how to make her desire him and starts asking how to become unshakable in himself. He builds a life, a rhythm, and a sense of identity that does not revolve around female validation. And that identity is what desire responds to. Attraction is not created by effort. It is revealed when effort is no longer necessary. When you stop trying to be wanted, you become noticeable. When you stop proving yourself, you become grounded. And when you stop chasing desire, you create the conditions where it can arise naturally. This is the paradox most men never understand. The less you try to make her interested, the more room you give desire to exist. And once you internalize this truth, you stop leaking value through effort. You stop forcing outcomes. And you begin operating from a place where attraction is a response to who you are, not what you do. That is where real desire begins. When a woman says she's not interested, most men assume one of two things. Either they're not attractive enough, or they didn't say or do the right thing. Both assumptions miss the truth. The real reason she's not interested is rarely about looks, status, or mistakes. It's about how she experiences you emotionally. And most of the time, what she feels is nothing. Not dislike, not rejection, just emotional flatness. This is the silent killer of attraction. A woman can forgive awkwardness. She can forgive timing. She can even forgive missteps. But she cannot desire a man who feels emotionally obvious. When she senses that she already understands you, predicts you, and knows where she stands with you, curiosity dies. And without curiosity, desire never wakes up. Most men unknowingly kill curiosity by being too transparent too soon. They reveal interest immediately. They clarify intentions early. They make their emotional availability clear before any tension has formed. They think honesty creates safety. But safety without polarity creates boredom. This is the uncomfortable truth. A woman doesn't lose interest because you're too kind. She loses interest because there's nothing left to discover. When your energy is always available, when your interest is always visible, and when your approval is always on the table, she has no reason to lean in emotionally. The dynamic becomes flat, predictable, safe in the wrong way. And predictable men do not spark desire. This is why she can say, "You're a great guy," and still feel no attraction. Because great describes character, not polarity. Desire is not built on character alone. It is built on emotional contrast. Contrast requires space. But most men fear space. They fear silence. They fear distance. They fear being misunderstood. So they fill every gap with effort. They explain themselves. They clarify their intentions. They stay emotionally present even when there is no reciprocity. And in doing so, they remove the very tension that attraction depends on. The silent reason she's not interested is not that you're lacking, it's that you're too accessible emotionally. When a woman senses that your emotional center revolves around her response, she feels pressure. Even if she can't articulate it, pressure suffocates desire. It makes attraction feel like an obligation rather than an impulse. This is why men who are emotionally self-contained feel different. They are not withholding. They are not distant. They are simply not leaning forward. Their interest unfolds slowly. Their energy remains grounded. Their attention is given selectively. And because of that, a woman cannot fully read them. She cannot predict their next move. She cannot assume their availability. That uncertainty creates curiosity. Curiosity leads to attention. Attention leads to desire. Most men never allow this process to happen because they rush to secure interest instead of letting it develop. They want clarity too soon. They want reassurance too early. And in that urgency, they communicate something subtle but powerful. I need to know where I stand. Neediness does not have to look desperate to be felt. It only has to exist internally. Women are extremely sensitive to emotional dependency. They feel it in tone, timing, and energy. And once they feel it, attraction pulls back automatically. Not because she wants power, but because desire does not flow toward need. This is why not interested often has nothing to do with you personally. It has to do with the emotional position you occupy in the dynamic. If you position yourself as the one seeking approval, seeking validation, or seeking certainty, you remove polarity. And polarity is what creates desire. A woman becomes interested when she senses that you are not trying to extract something from her emotionally, that you are not using her response to regulate your self-worth, that you are present, but not attached. This is the silent shift that changes everything. When you stop chasing interest, you stop emitting urgency. When urgency disappears, pressure disappears. And when pressure disappears, curiosity has room to breathe. She begins to wonder, not about whether you like her, but about who you are when you're not trying to be liked. That question is the beginning of attraction. Most men never reach this stage because they confuse emotional availability with emotional alignment. They believe being open means being fully invested immediately. But true alignment unfolds gradually. It requires patience, it requires restraint, and it requires comfort with ambiguity. A man who is comfortable not being chosen immediately feels different. His energy is slower, his presence is steadier, and that steadiness communicates value far more effectively than effort ever could. The silent reason she's not interested is not rejection, it's lack of tension. And tension cannot be forced. It must be allowed. When you stop over-explaining yourself, stop leaning in emotionally, and stop seeking confirmation of interest, you remove the block that was suffocating attraction. You don't make her interested. You simply stop preventing it. That is the shift most men never make. And once you do, the dynamic begins to change without you saying a word. Most men misunderstand indifference. They think it means acting cold, ignoring messages, or pretending not to care. That is not indifference. That is performance. And performance never creates desire. Real indifference is internal, not behavioral. It is not something you do to her. It is something you stop doing to yourself. You stop over-investing emotionally. You stop attaching your self-worth to her response. You stop needing a specific outcome to feel grounded. And that internal shift changes everything. A woman can feel the difference immediately. Fake indifference feels tense. It feels calculated. It feels like restraint under pressure. The man is silent, but his energy is loud. He is waiting. He is hoping. He is watching for a reaction. And that waiting leaks through everything he does. Real indifference feels calm. It feels settled. It feels complete. A man who is truly indifferent to the outcome is not trying to create curiosity. He is not trying to pull her closer. He is simply present in his own life. And that presence creates curiosity naturally, because the female mind is drawn to what it cannot fully read. When you are emotionally attached, your behavior becomes predictable. Your tone reveals intention. Your timing reveals availability. Your reactions reveal dependence. And once a woman can predict you, curiosity dies. Indifference removes predictability, not by withholding information, but by not orienting your inner world around her. A man who is indifferent to outcome does not rush to reply, not because he is playing games, but because he is engaged elsewhere. He does not over-explain, not because he is hiding something, but because he feels no need to justify himself. He does not escalate emotionally, not because he is cold, but because his emotions are not reactive. This creates a subtle psychological effect. She begins to notice space, and space invites curiosity. Curiosity is not attraction yet, but it is the doorway to it. A woman becomes curious when she senses that she does not fully occupy your emotional center, that your life continues with or without her interest, that your energy remains steady regardless of her response. This challenges an unconscious assumption many women carry: that male interest is always available, always responsive, always eager. When that assumption is disrupted, the mind starts paying attention, not because you ignored her, but because you didn't chase her. This is why indifference is so powerful. It is not aggressive. It is not manipulative. It does not demand attention. It simply refuses to chase it. And refusal is felt as strength. Most men never experience this shift because they confuse desire with effort. They believe that if they stop trying, attraction will disappear. But attraction does not disappear when effort stops. It disappears when need is felt. When need is removed, curiosity has room to breathe. A woman starts asking questions internally. Who is he really? Why doesn't he seem affected? Why does his presence feel calm instead of urgent? These questions are not logical. They are instinctive. And instinctive questions are the beginning of desire. This is where indifference must be understood correctly. It is not emotional distance. It is emotional self-sufficiency. You are not cutting her off. You are simply not feeding off her validation. That difference is everything. A man who is indifferent to outcome is not emotionally unavailable. He is emotionally self-contained. He can connect deeply. But he does not collapse if connection does not happen. He can show interest, but he does not invest prematurely. He can walk away without resentment because he was never leaning forward to begin with. This is why indifference creates curiosity, while coldness creates resistance. Coldness feels defensive. Indifference feels grounded. Coldness feels like punishment. Indifference feels like choice. A woman reacts negatively to coldness because it feels hostile. She reacts to indifference because it feels unfamiliar. And unfamiliar energy draws attention. Most men try to manufacture indifference by pulling back suddenly. They disappear. They delay replies intentionally. They suppress emotion, but because the indifference is not real, it backfires. The tension feels forced. The silence feels performative. Real indifference cannot be faked. It comes from having a life, a direction, and an identity that does not revolve around being chosen. It comes from self-respect, from standards, from knowing that attraction is a response, not a reward. When you reach this state, something interesting happens. You stop trying to make her curious. And because you stop trying, curiosity begins to form. She feels the lack of pressure. She feels the absence of need. She feels the steadiness of your presence. And steadiness is rare. This is the paradox. Indifference creates curiosity because it removes urgency. And urgency is what suffocates desire. When there is no rush, the mind slows down. When the mind slows down, it starts noticing. Noticing leads to interest. Interest leads to desire. And all of it begins when you stop trying to make something happen. Desire is not logical. If it were, attraction could be explained, negotiated, or earned, but it can't. Desire is a psychological response to how a man holds himself in uncertainty. It is triggered when a woman senses emotional tension without pressure, mystery without manipulation, and confidence without effort. Most men never create desire because they remove these elements too early. They rush to clarify. They rush to secure interest. They rush to be chosen. And in that rush, they kill the very conditions desire needs to exist. The first trigger is tension, not conflict, not drama, but emotional tension. Tension is the space between knowing and not knowing. It is the subtle feeling that something is unfolding, but not yet resolved. Desire lives in that space. The moment tension is resolved too early, attraction collapses into neutrality. This is why over-communication kills desire. When a man explains his intentions too clearly, reveals his feelings too quickly, and makes his availability obvious, tension disappears. There is nothing left to lean into, nothing to wonder about, nothing to feel pulled toward. Desire requires unresolved space. A man who understands this does not rush emotional disclosure. He allows connection to unfold naturally. He does not withhold information. But he does not volunteer his inner world prematurely either. He lets tension exist without trying to control it. That restraint is felt as strength. The second trigger is uncertainty. Uncertainty is often misunderstood as insecurity. But psychologically, uncertainty is what keeps the mind engaged. The human brain is wired to focus on what is not yet resolved. What is predictable becomes background noise. What is uncertain holds attention. When a woman is unsure of how invested you are, but feels no pressure, her mind stays active, not anxious, curious. This is the difference most men miss. Uncertainty created by need feels stressful. Uncertainty created by self-possession feels intriguing. A man who is grounded in himself does not rush to define the dynamic. He does not push for labels. He does not seek confirmation of interest. He allows ambiguity without discomfort. And because he is comfortable not knowing the outcome, the dynamic stays alive. Most men collapse uncertainty by chasing clarity. They ask questions that don't need answers yet. They seek reassurance that hasn't been earned. They want certainty to soothe their own anxiety. But certainty soothes insecurity, not desire. Desire grows when uncertainty is held calmly, not resolved urgently. The third trigger is self-possession. This is the most important one. Self-possession is the sense that a man is anchored in himself, that his emotional stability, identity, and direction are internal. He does not outsource his worth to attention, validation, or female interest. A woman can feel this instantly. A self-possessed man does not scan her reactions for meaning. He does not adjust his behavior to win approval. He does not change his pace to match her interest. He moves according to his own internal rhythm. That rhythm creates gravity. Desire responds to gravity. When a man is self-possessed, his presence feels solid. He is relaxed, but not passive, interested. but not invested, open, but not attached. This combination is rare, and rarity creates value. Most men fail here because they confuse desire with performance. They think attraction comes from doing the right things, saying the right words, or presenting the right image. But desire is not impressed by performance. It responds to being. You cannot act self-possessed. You either are, or you are not. And women can tell the difference. This is why men who do nothing special often create strong attraction. They are not trying to generate desire. They are simply not interfering with it. Their calmness allows tension to breathe. Their restraint allows uncertainty to remain. Their self-possession removes pressure. Pressure is the enemy of desire. The moment a woman feels responsible for your emotional state, attraction shuts down. But when she feels that your emotional world is stable regardless of her response, desire has space to emerge. This is the paradox. Desire is triggered not when you pursue it, but when you stop needing it, when you allow tension without forcing resolution, when you allow uncertainty without anxiety, when you carry yourself with self-possession instead of performance. That combination creates a psychological environment where desire can wake up naturally. This does not guarantee attraction. Nothing does. But it creates the only conditions where attraction is even possible. A man who understands this stops asking how to make a woman desire him. He starts asking how to remain grounded in himself, regardless of outcome. And that internal shift changes how he is perceived. Not as someone seeking attention, but as someone worth paying attention to. Desire does not respond to effort. It responds to presence. And presence is built when you stop trying to control how you are seen and start anchoring yourself in who you are. That is where attraction truly begins. The shift does not happen loudly. There is no dramatic reaction, no sudden confession, no clear signal you can point to. That is why most men miss it. The moment she starts noticing you differently begins quietly, internally, long before anything changes on the surface. It begins when your energy stops reaching toward her and starts settling back into yourself. This is the first sign. She no longer feels chased. When a woman senses that your attention is no longer pursuing her, something unexpected happens. The pressure disappears. And when pressure disappears, her emotional defenses soften. She doesn't feel evaluated. She doesn't feel cornered. She doesn't feel responsible for your emotions. She feels space. And space allows perception to change. At first, she may not think about you more. She may think about you less. This is where men panic. They assume the shift failed, but what's actually happening is more subtle. Her mind is recalibrating. She is adjusting to the absence of urgency. Then something interesting happens. She notices your steadiness. You didn't withdraw emotionally in resentment. You didn't disappear dramatically. You didn't try to regain attention. You simply continued. That continuity is rare. Most men change when interest is not returned. They become colder, or louder, or passive-aggressive, or emotionally distant. But when you remain grounded, calm, and unchanged, your presence starts to stand out in retrospect. She begins comparing, not consciously, Instinctively, she compares your restraint to the emotional reactions of other men. She compares your lack of urgency to their impatience. She compares your composure to their need for reassurance. And, slowly, without realizing it, she begins to experience contrast. Contrast is what creates value. This is the second sign. She starts noticing how you make her feel when you are around, not what you are doing for her. Your presence feels lighter, safer, more relaxed. Not because you are trying to make her comfortable, but because you are comfortable in yourself. This creates a subtle emotional curiosity. She may not label it attraction yet, but she feels something is different. You are no longer positioned as someone seeking her approval. You are simply there, unpressured, unbothered, and self-contained. And that shifts the dynamic. She is no longer responding to effort. She is responding to energy. This is where most men sabotage everything. They sense the shift and immediately lean in again. They reintroduce effort. They increase attention. They try to capitalize on the moment, and by doing so, they erase the contrast that created curiosity in the first place. The moment she starts noticing you differently requires restraint. Because this phase is fragile, the third sign appears when she begins to initiate small things, not big gestures, small ones. A question, a comment, a moment of attention that wasn't there before. This is not desire yet. This is engagement. And engagement is the doorway. She is testing something internally. Not you, herself. She is testing whether the dynamic feels different enough to explore further. And the way you respond in this moment determines everything. If you rush to match her energy, you collapse polarity. If you overreact emotionally, you reintroduce pressure. If you try to define the moment, you kill it. But if you remain steady, the shift deepens. This is the moment when attraction becomes possible. Not guaranteed, but possible. Because now she is no longer seeing you as emotionally available on demand. She is seeing you as emotionally grounded. And grounded men feel rare. They feel different. They feel valuable. This is the exact moment she starts reassessing. Not asking, "Does he like me?" but asking, "Why does he feel different?" That question changes everything. The reassessment is not about you changing your behavior. It's about her changing her perception. And perception is far more powerful than persuasion. You didn't convince her of anything. You simply allowed her to experience you without pressure. This is why attraction cannot be forced. It must be discovered. A man who understands this does not rush the process. He allows the shift to unfold at its own pace. He does not attach to outcome. He does not chase validation. He remains consistent in himself. And consistency is what makes the shift stick. The moment she starts noticing you differently is the moment you stop trying to be noticed. It is the moment your presence stops reaching outward and starts standing on its own. That presence creates gravity. And gravity does not pull by effort. It pulls by being solid. Once this shift happens, the dynamic is no longer one-sided. The emotional weight begins to balance. She is no longer responding to pursuit. She is responding to polarity. And polarity is where desire lives. This is not a trick. It is not a tactic. It is the natural result of a man who stopped trying to be chosen and started being grounded in himself. That is the moment she notices you differently. And once that perception changes, it rarely returns to what it was before. Desire is fragile, not because it's weak, but because it responds instantly to shifts in emotional posture. A woman can feel attraction rise quietly over time and feel it disappear in a single moment. Most men don't lose desire because they do something big. They lose it because they do something small, automatic, and unconscious. The first killer is over-explaining. The moment a man starts explaining his intentions, his feelings, or his actions too much, desire collapses. Not because communication is wrong, but because explanation reveals insecurity. It signals that you need her understanding to feel grounded. And the moment a woman feels responsible for your emotional clarity, attraction shuts down. Desire does not respond to justification. It responds to self-trust. A man who trusts himself does not narrate his inner world prematurely. He does not clarify every move. He does not rush to make sure he is understood. He allows his presence to speak first. The second killer is over-availability. Availability feels generous. It feels caring. But unlimited availability communicates low value. When a man adjusts his schedule instantly, responds immediately every time, and places a woman at the center of his attention too early, he removes polarity. Polarity requires separation. When your life compresses around her interest, desire suffocates. She feels that your time has no friction, no cost, no prioritization, and what has no cost carries no weight. Desire grows when access is selective, not scarce. The third killer is emotional chasing. This one is subtle. Emotional chasing doesn't always look desperate. Sometimes it looks like checking in too often. Sometimes it looks like asking how she feels repeatedly. Sometimes it looks like trying to fix the vibe. But all of it communicates the same thing. I am trying to secure an emotional outcome. And the moment desire senses outcome dependence, it retreats. A woman does not want to be chased emotionally. She wants to be met emotionally. There is a difference. Chasing puts pressure on her to respond. Meeting allows connection to unfold naturally. The fourth killer is seeking reassurance. Reassurance feels comforting to the man. It feels like clarity. But psychologically, reassurance-seeking places the woman in a parental role. She becomes the emotional regulator. And once that dynamic forms, attraction disappears. Desire cannot exist where caretaking is required. A self-possessed man does not ask for reassurance. Not because he doesn't care, but because he is not outsourcing his emotional stability. He allows uncertainty to exist without needing to resolve it immediately. The fifth killer is breaking your own frame. This happens when a man senses attraction rising and immediately abandons his boundaries. He becomes more agreeable. He softens his standards. He starts adapting himself to fit her preferences. And in doing so, he collapses the very identity that created desire. Desire is drawn to coherence. When your values, behavior, and self-image stay aligned regardless of her response. Attraction grows when they shift in reaction to her interest. Attraction dies. The sixth killer is trying to lock it in too soon. Men often feel the shift and rush to define it. They push for labels. They escalate commitment. They try to secure the connection. But desire does not want to be secured. It wants to unfold. Premature certainty kills tension. A man who understands desire allows things to breathe. He does not rush the process. He does not force momentum. He trusts that if attraction is real, it will deepen without pressure. The final killer is losing your center. This is the root of all the others. The moment your mood starts rising and falling based on her attention, desire is already dying. When your emotional state becomes reactive, when you start monitoring her responses, when you begin adjusting yourself to maintain interest, you lose the grounded presence that sparked attraction in the first place. Desire responds to stability, not perfection, not performance. A woman may not consciously track these shifts, but she feels them instinctively, immediately, and once desire senses instability, it pulls back without explanation. This is why so many men feel confused. They did nothing wrong, but they stopped being centered. Desire is not sustained by doing more. It is sustained by not doing the wrong things. When you remove over-explaining, over-availability, emotional chasing, reassurance-seeking, and self-abandonment, desire has room to exist. You don't force it. You protect the conditions that allow it to grow. This is the discipline most men never develop. Not discipline of action, discipline of restraint. And restraint is what separates men who spark desire from men who exhaust it. At this point, the question is no longer how to make a woman desire you. That question belongs to the man who is still chasing outcomes. The real question is how to become the kind of man desire responds to naturally. And the answer is not technique. It is identity. A woman does not desire behaviors. She desires who a man is when no one is watching. Most men try to generate attraction by adjusting how they act around women. They become smoother, more attentive, more agreeable, more available. But these changes are external, and external shifts never last. Because the moment pressure appears, the old habits return. Desire responds to internal alignment. A man who is desired without chasing has one defining trait. He is anchored in his own frame. His sense of direction, value, and rhythm does not come from female interest. It comes from a life that already feels full. This is what most men underestimate. Women are not drawn to men who want them. They are drawn to men who want something beyond them. Purpose creates gravity. A man who is moving towards something meaningful does not linger emotionally. He does not hover. He does not wait for signals. His attention is present, but not consumed. And that creates a powerful contrast to men whose lives pause around female validation. This is the first identity shift. You stop orienting your life around being chosen. The second shift is standards. A man who is desired without chasing does not audition. He evaluates. not aggressively, not judgmentally, calmly. He notices alignment. He notices effort. He notices reciprocity. And when those things are missing, he does not explain himself. He adjusts access. This is not punishment. It is coherence. When your standards are real, your behavior stays consistent regardless of interest. You do not become more generous when attention increases. You do not become resentful when it decreases. You remain the same. Consistency is magnetic. The third shift is emotional self-regulation. A man who is desired without chasing does not use women to regulate his emotional state. He does not need attention to feel grounded. He does not need reassurance to feel stable. His emotional center is internal. This is felt instantly. A woman senses when a man's mood depends on her response, and the moment she feels that dependency, attraction collapses. But when she feels that your emotional world remains steady with or without her interest, desire has space to grow, not because you are detached, but because you are whole. The fourth shift is pace. A man who is desired without chasing moves slowly, not passively, intentionally. He does not rush connection. He does not force momentum. He allows attraction to unfold at a natural rhythm. This patience communicates confidence. Impatience communicates lack. When a man can sit comfortably in ambiguity, he signals abundance. He is not racing toward an outcome. He is observing alignment. And that observation changes the dynamic. The woman is no longer the evaluator. She is being evaluated, not overtly, energetically. The final shift is non-attachment to outcome. This is the hardest one. A man who is desired without chasing genuinely accepts either result. Connection or no connection. Interest or indifference. He does not need to win. He does not need to be chosen. He values alignment more than validation. This non-attachment is not indifference to women. It is loyalty to self-respect. And this is where desire often appears unexpectedly. Because desire does not respond to wanting, it responds to grounded presence. When you stop trying to be attractive and start being aligned, attraction becomes a byproduct. When you stop chasing desire and start building a life that feels solid, women begin to feel your absence before they feel your presence. Not because you withdrew, but because you were never leaning forward to begin with. This is the man women describe as different. Not louder, not flashier, not smoother, but steadier. He does not convince. He does not pursue. He does not perform. He allows. And allowance is what lets desire emerge. Becoming a man she desires without chasing is not about withholding attention. It is about withholding need. It is about living in a way where attention is something you offer, not something you require. That shift cannot be faked. It must be built. And once it is built, you stop asking how to make a woman desire you, because you no longer need the answer. Attraction is not something you chase. It is something you allow to happen when you stop getting in your own way. Most men spend their lives trying to be wanted. They adjust. They explain. They perform. But desire never responds to performance. It responds to presence. A woman does not desire the man who tries the hardest. She desires the man who is grounded enough to remain himself, even when nothing is guaranteed. When you